Hi, class. I wanted to put out kind of a mini lesson on independent and dependent variables. You guys have been continuing to work really hard. I do see this concept continuing to pop up, though, as something that some of you are struggling with from time to time. And I wanted to put something out because it's a really important concept for moving forward. If we have a hard time identifying these variables, then the statistical analyses coming up are going to be very difficult to get correct. Unless you're super confident on independent and dependent variables, I do recommend that you watch this. I also really encourage you to go back to our class text, our book, and the lectures and PowerPoints within the module. I do think those are really good resources and are more in depth than this right here, but I just wanted to give you kind of a mini concentrated lesson from my point of view. So we'll just walk through some of these problems. I posted this sheet within the module too, so you can pull it up and kind of follow along with me. We won't go through all of them. I have a 15-minute time limit here on screencast, so I won't be able to go through them all, but did want to just go through some of them. So we have our first one here. A researcher wants to know if people who do community service have higher levels of empathy than people who do not do community service. Participants are divided into 10 plus hours of community service, 1 to 10 hours of CS and no CS. Each participant completes a measure of empathy in which scores can range from 0 to 100. Okay, so with the independent variable, we're always asking this question: what are we manipulating in this experiment? What are we manipulating? So what are we doing to our participants in order to get some sort of readout? So in this experiment, I think it's relatively more straightforward than some of your homework. It's we are splitting them up based on their levels of community service. So we are splitting them up with 10 hours above or below 10 hours. That's what we're manipulating. The dependent variable, I always think of the dependent variable like this. The dependent variable depends on the independent variable. So we're measuring something based on our manipulation. So in this case, we are measuring empathy based on level of community service. So the dependent variable would be level of empathy. Okay. So let's do another one. This one is a little bit trickier, a little bit more like your homework, I think, and what you kind of encounter. A research team has developed a new medication to treat ADHD. They think that their new medicine will be more effective than the current medication. The team asked local doctors to do a study in which newly diagnosed children with ADHD are matched with other children taking the current medication based on symptoms and physical attributes of the children. The research team will then test all the children after 1 year to determine the effectiveness of the new medication on a standardized measure. What are we manipulating here? We are manipulating what medication the children with ADHD get. That's what we're manipulating. Simple as that. So you can say for independent variable, receiving new medication versus no medication or regular medication. I don't think they specify in here whether the control group gets no medication or whether they just keep taking their same medication, but it's so the independent variable would be taking the new medication or not. Okay. The dependent variable would be the severity of symptoms on the measure a year after they take the medication. So again, the severity of symptoms depends on whether they're taking the current medication or not. That's how they set up this experiment. We're manipulating the experiment by giving some children a new medication and others don't. And what we're measuring based on that is severity of symptoms. Okay. Let's skip down here. A research group is interested in determining if children of divorced parents relate differently to authority figures than children of non-divorced parents. They administer a series of questionnaires to assess basic demographics information, gender, age, and measure of resistance to authority figures. Higher scores, more resistant to authority. Total number of 150 completed the measures. Okay. So independent variable. The independent variable. Again, what are we manipulating here? We are comparing children of divorced parents to non-divorced parents. That's what we are looking at. That's what we're manipulating. We're trying to see their level of resistance to authority. That's our dependent variable. So again, we are measuring the resistance to authority, which we are setting it up as depending on whether they are divorced, whether they are children of divorced parents or non-divorced parents. Okay? Okay, let's do this simple one here. A student research project wanted to determine the relationship between the number of times students attend class, 0 to 48, and their satisfaction with the class overall. They believe that the more students attend class, the happier they will be with the class. Okay, cool. So this is actually a regression test, which we'll get to towards the end of the semester. So this one's a little bit different. So they're trying to determine if there's a relationship between attending class and their satisfaction. Okay, so what are we kind of manipulating here? What's our independent variable? The amount of times they attend class. The dependent variable, class satisfaction. So the question that you could ask yourself is, does class satisfaction depend on attendance in that class? So we're manipulating, or we're seeking out times students attend class, and we're seeing if that has an effect on class satisfaction. Okay, let's go down to number 7 here. This one I think is a pretty straightforward one. A group of concerned citizens are interested in whether homeowners in Area A pay more property taxes than homeowners in Area B. They would like to compare the average amount of property tax paid in each area. Each area has roughly 100 unique homes. Okay, what are we manipulating here? We have two groups, owners in Area A and owners in Area B. And we're trying to see if they differ in property taxes. So do the amount of property taxes depend on which area that they live in? Number 8, doctors believe that the average alcoholic drink consumption has increased in the past 25 years. Data from the 1980 indicates that the average person consumes 1.78 alcoholic drinks per sitting. However, today the average is 3.67. The variance is not known for either data collection period. So what is the independent variable here? Okay, it is time. This is a little bit of a tricky one. It is time. So they're comparing 1980 to current day. So let's say it was 2016. They're comparing those two times. That's what we're manipulating. We're trying to see if number of alcoholic drinks is dependent on that time gap. So the dependent variable is number of alcoholic drinks. All right, let's do a couple more. Well, there's only a couple left. I guess we're kind of flying through this. Let's do maybe one more, and then we'll talk a little bit. Okay, let's do this one. I haven't read this one yet, but Dr. Antonio believes that you can predict a person's choice of mate from their personal inventory of characteristics. He administers the PSY to 100 students on campus and has those students rate the likelihood of dating a group of 10 co-eds. Okay, so think about it for a sec. So what are we manipulating here? What are we trying to see has an impact? It's personality characteristics. We're trying to see the likelihood of people dating other people based on their personality characteristics. So the dependent variable is this measurement on whether they would date this group of 10 co-eds. Does that depend on their personality characteristics? So personality characteristics is independent variable. Dependent variable is the likelihood that they would date these 10 co-eds. So we're manipulating, or we're seeing if the personality characteristics impact or control the likelihood that they would date those co-eds. All right. So that's just kind of some different examples, guys. Obviously, we'll have different statistical analyses. This didn't cover every statistical analysis. We had some t-tests in there and some z statistics, and we had a regression or two in there. When we get to ANOVAs and things like that, I might put another one of these out because it does there's multiple independent variables, and that gets a little bit more confusing at times, but it's once you get the hang of it, it's really not. This is just one of those things, guys, it just takes practice seeing the independent variable and the dependent variable. You read a lot of examples, you get more used to it, but I always go back to, what are we manipulating here? What is the experiment manipulating? And then for the dependent variable, what are we measuring? And you can also ask yourself, what depends on the independent variable? So going back to this first one, the level of empathy, how does that depend on community service versus not community service? Okay. So that's a basic rundown. Again, please go over your other material, but I hope this helped maybe a little bit. If you have any questions here about anything on this page, feel free to email me. We didn't do the scaling just because I didn't want to lose too much time going over that. And you guys have been doing relatively well on scaling, and the independent and dependent variables, knowing that, in my opinion, is really important. So that's it for now, guys, and I'll talk to you all soon.